Welcome everybody here to Granite Links. Tonight is the community meeting for the lease extension for Quarry Hills. My name is Scott Campbell. I'm a councilor at large. I'm one of the three councilors at large. I'm filling in for Ward 4 Councilor Jim Devine, who's recused himself. I am here to represent the city and host this opportunity for us to meet and sit with the members of the QHA, have some questions answered, I should say. So I just want to go through a few guidelines. So there's a sign-up sheet there. If you have not signed up, please do. I'll be pulling from that when it comes time for those who would like to speak. We will have a 5-minute cap, but we'll be, reasonable with that. If you have items that you'd want to discuss, we ask that we keep it civil. We ask that we keep it as respectful as possible. And if there's any questions anybody has, if we don't have the answer to it, we have a hearing coming up on Monday with the entire council where we will be able to answer a lot of those questions. And any questions we don't have answers for tonight, we will have on Monday night. So we'll be at Monday night at 6:35 in the City Council chambers at City Hall. I want to introduce some of my colleagues here with me tonight. Ward 1 Councilor Dave McCarthy. He is the chair of the Finance Committee and spends a lot of time in the ordinance and is a great mentor and someone who knows a lot of the information from the past. We have Richard Ash from Ward 2. He's here tonight to observe. And Chris Walker from the Mayor's office here as the Chief of Staff. Just a couple of key points to emphasize. No decisions on the lease or the extension or anything involving QHH will take place tonight. So this is just an informative, informational session. So if that's hopefully what you came for. We are here to listen and gather as much information as possible. If we can answer anything on the spot, we will, but we will have all the answers going forward. There are members of the QHA here, but I'm going to introduce the Director of Operations first, who is Kevin Mason. He's going to come up and give his presentation, and after that, we'll get into the question and answer period. So thank you all for coming here tonight. It's really important to have the public input, but at this time, I'd like to hand it over to Kevin Mason.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to Granite Links. I already broke it. What'd you do? Good evening and welcome to Granite Links. Jesus. All right. Last try. Okay. Welcome to Granite Links. Tonight I have the pleasure of presenting QHA's request for a 50-year lease extension and the potential exciting economic developments, opportunities that could come with such an investment and lease extension that we're requesting. The first slide. So the first slide I want to talk about is the net contribution or the contributions of rental payments made from the QHA to the City of Quincy from the inception of Granite Links, which started back in 2003 to current date. So looking at that, the conclusion of the calendar year 24, the QHA will have paid $9.4 million roughly to the City of Quincy in form of rent. The last 3 years, we have, since we've recovered from COVID, we have grown the business, and the rental payment for those 3 years have exceeded $800,000. We expect 24 to close around $900,000 in rental payment. When we think about the rental payment, it's not a traditional rental payment like you pay for an apartment or thing of that nature. It's more tied to two contributions, right? There's a 10% gross revenue share on golf, and there's a 10% net revenue share on food and beverage. So the gross component of the golf is made up of membership dues and greens fees. It's made up of revenue that comes from the driving range and tournament and simulator fees. So that's what the gross contribution of that is. What is not included in the gross golf revenue share is cart fees. So in 2012, the current lease was amended to remove cart fees. The reason for this was because of the revenue generated by the carts does not cover the expense of having championship level golf carts at Quarry Hills. Simply put, the cost to cover the carts is a loss for QHA. Some of the expenses that you probably wouldn't even think of that are included in that are the cost to lease 140 plus golf carts, the labor to support the supply of golf carts. We do about 40,000 rounds a year here. So the flow of golf carts from the cart barn up to the golfers here it's exorbitant. The general maintenance and repair of the golf carts, a lot of wear and tear. As you notice, you go look at like Ponkapog or President's Golf Course, or even Furnace Brook Golf Course, where the terrain is much more hilly here, so the wear and tear on the golf carts is not comparable. So there's a lot of maintenance on the golf carts themselves. We also have to charge the golf carts. They're all electric carts. So AI helped me out with this fun fact, but it's about $25 per month per cart to charge a golf cart. Specialized software on all the golf carts, so we need to keep our golfers safe. So there's a security net that's cast over the 375 or so acres of golf to ensure that the golfers or the people driving the golf carts cannot crash into a quarry. They're safe working distance away from the ledges and things of that nature. So a lot of goes into that. It's a big expense to cover. On the net side, the food and beverage side, QHA pays 10% of net of all reasonable F&B expenses. So in conclusion, 10% gross, 10% net, 10% gross of golf, 10% net of food and beverage has been consistent since dating back to 2003. The only change, or the major change, is when we took the golf carts off of the lease in 2012 amendment to that lease, and it was removed from the gross total. This does not change in the proposed lease extension. So the 10% net and 10% gross, that is not changing. We're not making any changes to that. And to take another level outside of the rent towards, like, say, a real estate or a property tax, if you did an assessment, or when we completed assessment on the golf course itself, if we were paying the tax over the rent, it would be about $650,000 a year. So this year we're projecting to pay the city of Quincy in rental fees, not including about $100,000 in food and beverage sales tax, $900,000. So over $1 million in total when you factor in the sales tax, but also the rental fee. If we own the property, it would be about $650,000. So before I get into the meat and potatoes of the presentation, I guess as of today, QHA has currently outgrown its current facilities. We have plateaued, right? And future growth and economic development of Granite Links requires significant investment in long-term financing. Our team is focused on economic development, job creation, and growing the revenue share with the city of Quincy. QHA is and has been in compliance of its current lease. We have never been out of compliance with the lease. Over the last 2 years, we've collected feedback, made improvements as good corporate citizens to better the overall experience of visiting Quincy Hills, Quarry Hills. To be crystal clear, this was all over and above the obligations currently in the lease. So we took the voice of our customers, understood some of the gaps and things that we addressed as reasonable accommodations, and over the last 2 years, we've been working to close out those. Some things included in that are assisting with the installation of traffic safety lights at the bottom of Ruschutti Drive, implementing a semi-annual trail maintenance program, and upgrading the wayfinding trail signs. And lastly, we closed out a supply chain driven delay for the project at the soccer and the baseball field with the drainage issue, on top of installing concrete dugouts and batting cages to minimize the effect of rainouts that was plaguing the baseball field. So for today's agenda, we'll talk about 2022, our obstacles to growth. So I'll talk about that briefly. We heard you, so going through the list of things that we collected from feedback and meetings with some of the people in this room to improve the experience at Quarry Hills. future development opportunities, and then after that we can open it up to questions. So back in 2022, we presented to the Ward 4 folks downstairs in the Granite Room. We've since grown. We're in the ballroom now. And after that to the council about a 99-year lease extension. We had mentioned in those meetings, we're very clear that any investment in the growth at Granite Links would only happen after the following. 1, traffic safety concerns had been addressed or resolved. 2, parking and overflow business flow was improved. And lastly, we had worked to identify projects that support our growth modes, which are in food and beverage and events. So with that said, we heard you. So the traffic safety issue that I mentioned, maintenance and signage for the trails, the drainage and condition of the soccer and baseball fields, financial audit was a common theme, and amount of term requested in the lease. So as it pertains to public safety, this is great collaborative work between from the state, the local, and then a little bit of a push from the Quarry Hills team to get this over the finish line. The light is installed at the bottom of the hill. As someone that comes up the hill every day, it's much improved over what it was. It helps us with the flow of patrons and people that live up at the Granite Links, Quarry Hills, the Q, the surrounding areas. Much overdue, and we're glad that 10-year project is closed out. Next, we met with the Friends of the Blue Hills and some other folks on the conditions of the trails and the condition of the signs that were currently that were previously in place to guide someone that wanted to go on the Quarry Hills side of the Blue Hills. So this was a very collaborative project. The QHEA team worked with the Friends of the Blue Hills and a consultant from Karen from Good to design, to fabricate, install the wayfinding signs that you see on the Quarry Hills side of the Blue Hills. The DCR also helped out with this with the spot location and really helping driving a good collaborative effort. We had the privilege of kind of just sitting back. We're not experts on trail signs, so we were able to work with the consultants and allow the consultant basically open rein to work with the Friends of the Blue Hills to be able to design a best-in-class trail sign. The last I spoke to the DCR, they're looking at adapting the sign on the other side of the Blue Hills. So obviously a success. We're really happy with the collaboration and the new director of the Friends of the Blue Hills, Jen. I'm not sure if she's here tonight, but she mentioned she was probably going to stop by. But the strategic partnership we've made with her and her mission statement to grow this side of the Blue Hills is truly energizing, and we'll welcome any foot traffic to this side of the Blue Hills. Foot traffic to Quarry Hills is a win for all of us. Next, we have the drainage and condition of the baseball field. So as I mentioned, coming out of COVID, it was identified that there was a drainage issue at the baseball fields, in between the baseball and the soccer fields. Unfortunately, like every other business on planet Earth, we were impacted by COVID supply chain, and we were not able to close that out prior to 2022. As soon as the materials were delivered, our team, our great superintendent, Brad McDonald, mobilized his crew and fixed the drainage type issue. While we were up at the ball fields, we talked to the Parks and Recs people, and specifically Councilor DeBona, and he had mentioned the amount of times, not that we weren't aware of it, our team spends a lot of time up there combing and grooming the dugouts when there is rain so that the games aren't canceled, but the ask or the need for concrete dugouts came apart. So we took that upon ourselves to install concrete dugouts, working with the city of Quincy, of course, and Dave Murphy and his team to add the replacing the existing clay dugouts with cement dugouts, concrete dugouts, and the batting cages as well. In addition to that, we have added to the lease a commitment to maintain the ball field. So I believe the city of Quincy does a rebuild of the infield between 15 and 20 years. That's kind of the life cycle of an infield for a baseball field. We committed to rebuilding that every 10 years. That's currently in the lease, and to continue to maintain the grounds in the lease. We also refreshed the stone dust in the common areas in between the concession stands. So good collaboration there, and the outcome is I don't have the exact stat on how many games weren't canceled as a result of the concrete dugout, but it was definitely improved by talking to the Parks and Recs folks. The next is a financial audit of QHA. So in 2023, the city exercised its right under a current lease to perform a third-party audit. So Sullivan's and Powers did that and completed it in April of 23, and we are confirmed in compliance. So I believe the results of that will be public records in short order. I know the city received that back, but we got glowing reviews back at the time when the audit was completed. Lastly, after many conversations and discussions, we've reduced the term of the lease from 99 years to 50 years. As I hope it's obvious for you, all the stuff that we've done over the last 2 years, the interviews we've had, the discussions we've had with people at the City of Quincy, working with the city councilors, a lot of hard work went into closing out some of these action items or the observations that came out of the many discussions and improving the experience at Quarry Hills. So now getting into the fun stuff, the lease extension. So just a highlight of the proposed lease extension. So these are the main themes. So as I just mentioned, the 99 years has been reduced to a 50-year extension to the current lease. The Lions Turning Mill, which is directly behind us over here, will be given back to the city. So that parcel was part of the rental with the city of Quincy, so that will be carved out and given back to the city. The trail access and signage, installation and maintenance of informational signs at the designated trailheads with semi-annual grooming. So we're going to groom in the spring and the fall to make sure that they're passable. Option to purchase a portion of the lease premise of roughly about 12 acres for development of a hotel to support our business. Reconditioning the playing fields on a 10-year periodic cycle. This was a recommendation by the Parks and Recs team. And the reformation of the QHAC, or the Quarry Hills Advisory Commission committee, to help us with the development projects that you're about to see. So why does QHA need a lease extension? This is pretty simple for me. Granite Links has reached its operating capacity. Continued economic development requires significant investment, which requires long-term financing. We don't want to wait to the conclusion of our current lease or 20 years down the road. We want to start investing in the property now. Right? It makes sense to grow our business. We've hit a point of stagnation. We'll see incremental growth, basically more or less volume or inflation-related type growth. We've exhausted every opportunity. So the major opportunities and the themes that we have require significant investment. So on for development opportunities. So it's kind of a spoiler alert. When we presented to the city, I didn't have all these beautiful renderings around the room, but so when we're looking at development opportunities, we've identified 5. One, a boutique hotel and spa that would be located at the flagpoles as you enter the Rischuti Drive, off of Rischuti Drive, entering Granite Links. 2 would be a refresh of the Granite Links Tavern. So the tavern was opened in 2006, 2007. It's a little bit stale. It could do a refresh. The modernization, getting to more of a date night. You'll see a couple of the renderings that we have around the room show an expansion of the outdoor capacity overlooking the quarry, a real beautiful overlook for the city. Weather agnostic upgrades. This sounds really funky, but if you look, we have a lot of tents here. So our season is as short or as long as the weather permits. So they're not heated or cooled efficiently. Well, I shouldn't say cool, but we do a pretty good job in the summer of cooling them, but more or less the heating attribute. So that would be taking the weather impact out of it and coming up with a more year-round entertainment or events type location. Parking lot remediation. As I'm sure all of you have been here on our busy days, there's 2 or 3 days, maybe 4, a year where parking is a nightmare. So we understand that that's an issue that we need to remediate, and it's incorporated into the hotel project. And also we have an optimization of the current footprint to better utilize the amount of square feet that we currently have. Lastly, as being a part of success, right, with growth, you outreach or you outgrow your capabilities. So facilities maintenance upgrades, as you grow, you need more of this, you need more storage space, things of that nature. So that would also be addressed in these plans. So real briefly, and then we can get into the questions. The parking lot expansion will be done in 2 phases. Phase 1 would be, as I mentioned, optimizing the current footprint to streamline the flow of traffic and make it more safe. That doesn't get us a whole lot of additional spaces. We net out at a plus 20. Phase 2 is really where we start to see the capacity increase. So we're aiming for roughly 800 spaces. If the development plans for the hotel go through, there'd be between 150 and 180 structured parking, and the balance would be surface parking. For the hotel project, this is, as I mentioned before, a boutique style hotel. It's not a monster of a hotel. It's 110 rooms, and it has a covered walkway that goes from the hotel to the ballroom to help with the weddings and the events, to make sure that they're not impacted by weather. And as I mentioned, 150 to 180 additional parking spaces in the garage. For the tavern refresh, this is a modernization of the tavern and focusing on the view. So anybody that's eaten in the tavern, if you're at the bar area, it's very hard to see the beautiful Boston skyline that we see behind me right now. We want to be able to capture that. Anything we learned out of COVID, and you can see it from the rental contribution to the city, is outdoor seating, outdoor eating, outdoor activities. When you can be outdoors is where people want to be. So looking at as the pointer works, actually you can see in that photo over there, you can see the bigger rendering of an expanded patio outside of the veranda room off of the tavern to capture outdoor seating, an outdoor bar that overlooks the quarry. It could be between 2,500 and 4,000 square feet. And then also our veranda room, which currently holds about 70 people. We'd expand that roughly 5 to 7 feet to up the capacity of an event in there to between 85 to 100 people comfortably. As I mentioned, with weather agnostic facilities, this is a big one. The existing tent would be weatherproofed by a year-round pavilion type style. It will mirror the decor of the tavern and the hotel, so everything is consistent and it flows well. But this would be a year-round facility that would allow us to have 2 large-scale weddings at the same time. Right now, we can have a large and a small. This would allow us to have the amount of weddings we have here per year. And with that, we get to look at this beautiful rendering. Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. That was an exciting presentation. I do want to do a couple more housekeeping items. QATV is here. John Cleary, thank you for joining us. We have Doreen and Galen from Senator Keating's office here. Thank you for joining us here. And just some ground rules. So we're going to line up. It's really going to just be line up as we go. Whoever would like to have any questions answered, we will note all the questions. We will make sure that we have all the information available. So we'll go one person at a time. If one of the members of the city needs to answer the questions, that's fine too. Kevin, his team, they'll have answers as well. So if we could take a moment, work your way up. For anybody who would like to ask any questions, there'll be no formal order, just as we get into line. I do ask that we have one person at a time. There is one microphone, so one person talking at a time. We want to make sure we keep order so everybody can hear. There's a lot of information to be found here, and we want to make sure that we are keeping on time and making it worth it. So if you could just state your name and your address and say hello. I need to-
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Heather Doney, and I live at 912 Southern Artery. And I'm originally from New Orleans, if you hear a little bit of an accent. So my husband used to hit balls on the driving range at Granite Links here. And when we first started dating, he brought me up to see the sunset. And he was right about the incredible view. But I told him, too bad this lovely place got turned into a golf course. He said it used to be a dump, an actual dump, before it was a golf course. And I was shocked that something like that could be allowed to happen to a place so beautiful. So let me be clear that I think a golf course is a lot better than a dump, and I appreciate what's been done here. But also that an area with this sort of view is incomparably special, worth more than its weight in gold, and could be more. I believe a publicly accessible park view here, perhaps something like the new Millennium Park in Dedham, would be better for Quincy's citizens and visitors than a pay-for-play golf club and function hall that is really more for more affluent people. However, I'll be in my 70s when the current lease is up, for 32 years. I'd be lucky to see such a possibility. Yet, like I told Richard Ash when I let him know my concerns earlier, I have 2 small children, and I think that their generation, my children are very little, they're not even Gen Z, they're Gen Alpha. They might have other ideas for this space, and they should be allowed to act on them if they do. So my question is, what could Quarry Hills and the city accomplish if the current lease term is left in place, even if some details within it are seen fit to renegotiate? Thank you all very much.
So, thank you, Heather. So from our perspective, if the lease extension does not go through, we'll continue to run the business as it is for the next, until the lease is concluded. So 30-something years.
Would that change some of your big dreams and plans?
Absolutely. So the reason why we're asking for lease extension is to grant us the ability to finance large-scale projects, talking north of 30, 40, $50 million.
Would you be able to finance some of these elements with the current lease?
No,
You would not.
there's not enough term left on that.
Okay. What is the minimum extension you could have for financing these things? If you,
I can circle back on
yeah,
that.
that would be wonderful, because for me, you've got some beautiful plans. I'm a little concerned about the parking. I'm not a big golf person, but it's the future of what could be built in the future, and I want to make sure we don't curtail the next generation. Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you.
Actually, can we just make sure you state your name, your address? And
Brendan Doyle, 41 Stonybury Road, Quincy, Mass. Right? We all live in Mass. So, quick question, because that's a great question. Can you build on a dump right now?
There's certain areas we cannot build on
Why is that?
because of it's an ex-landfill.
Right, so they can collapse on
Non-developable.
people,
Yep.
right? So, if you look at this, like 50 years from now, you could really only be a walking trail or an open field, right? By law? By the state of
Correct.
Massachusetts?
In certain areas, yes.
Right. So it's nothing or it's not anything, because I have kids, Generation Alpha as well, but I know the alternative here because my father was a former selectman in Milton dealing with the same dump issues. You can't build here, so what else is going to be here is the real question.
Thank you.
My name's Mike Carter, live at 5 Post Island Road in Quincy. Combination of comments and questions, both. I'm a member of a group called Quarry Hills Citizens Advocates, and just for the record, we feel that we need this group because our elected officials are not advocating for the best interests of the citizens with either the 99-year lease proposal or this new 50-year lease proposal. And we are afraid that this is going to be railroaded through, if possible, by the last city council meeting. There's an ordinance committee meeting next week, and then the last city council meeting is December 16th. And we think this is being rushed. There's so many questions, so many issues with even the 50-year lease that have not been addressed publicly or clearly. A question, have anybody here ever heard of a renter writing the lease when they rent a property? I haven't. So I think that's pretty unusual, that this lease is not coming from the city and on behalf of the city, unless I'm wrong. It's being presented by Quarry Hills Associates. So, you want to answer that, Mr. Walker?
This is a proposal from the mayor. It is based off of a lot of work done between Quarry Hills Associates and the city over the last several years. But it is written by both parties. I mean, there was both give and take on both ends, as it was 20 years ago, 25 years ago when the original lease was designed. So I don't, if there is a misperception that this is just Quarry Hills, it is their, package going forward, but this is a city document. This is a home rule petition proposed to the city council by the mayor. The mayor supports it. And it's a dual partnership, as it has been from the very beginning.
Okay. Well, we know that the mayor supports this, but I think there are a lot of citizens who do not, because they feel like it's not to the best interest of the citizens. Also, speaking of the home rule petitions are generally granted more than 30 years, as I understand it, to either utilities or non-profits, not to for-profit corporations, which Quarry Hills is.
Sure. Let me give you a little bit of perspective here. I know I'm not going to convince some folks here and you,
Oh, you might.
on this. But let's go back 30, 35 years ago when this process started. The city had a landfill that was under a mandate requirement to be capped. It was costing the city 7 figures or more every single year. At that point in time, a group of people had some great vision, put out an RFP. Perhaps maybe we can reuse this site. 7 people responded, 7 entities responded to that. 1 entity responded that did not call for a major city investment, and that was Granite Lakes Quarry Hills Associates. 1 out of the 7. Fast forward, the vision, the complications at that time, the amount of private investment that was risked at that time, and what we have today, I don't think anyone back then could have dreamed of what we have here today. And our position, the mayor's position, is we have a remarkably successful facility that attracts tens of thousands of people from over the Commonwealth, from across the country, to this place. And it provides the city a direct revenue stream. There's very few scenarios under which that would have played out in any event. And that's why when we approach this lease extension, the general philosophy is, how do we make Quarry Hills more successful than it already is? And the extension is how we do that. And when Quarry Hills is successful, the city is successful. If Quarry Hills is allowed to do some of these new things, that's more revenue to the city. The carve-out that Kevin talked about the hotel, the sale piece, that was the mayor's idea. That's a benefit to the city. Quarry Hills didn't care about that. We added that because we felt, given an opportunity, now that's got to go through its own separate process. This is, within the lease itself, it doesn't give anyone any permission to build a hotel, do any of this stuff. There still has to be a separate process to go through if they do exercise the option to buy, there's a whole separate process that goes along with that. But we carved that out because now we have added benefit of the property tax from the property that will be sold, plus the hotel motel room tax. Several $100,000 a year that is added to the potential revenue that the city can make from this. So our position is, and I know that there's a difference of opinion, and that's fine, but our position, and I think the public in general would largely agree, that this is a remarkable place that does not exist, could not have happened in a lot of other places. The stars aligned, made it work. Why would we not give them the opportunity to continue this for the additional 50 years? that will benefit the entire community going forward. That's our general position on it.
I think that's the general position, and, but I think there are a lot of specifics that need to be answered to how the maximum benefit to the citizens of Quincy can be taken.
Understood. And you mentioned how this process has gone. It's been a several-year process. There have been several meetings. There's this meeting tonight. There's another public hearing between next week, and then there's a council meeting on the 16th. There's 3 public meetings right in a row that we think we can get questions answered. If we can't, we move on. We keep going.
Well, we're hoping that the moving on will be to extend the discussion, and so that the details are explained to people. And I don't want to get into
No, I
a
get
debate
it.
with you about this, but I think, from November 18th, when Quarry Hills was allowed, Associates was allowed to make their presentation at the city council, and then have this one community meeting and one public hearing next week. That's not sufficient for a project of this size. And I'd point out too, yes, wonderful things have been done up here, but this group did not do this for free either. There's something like $100 million that they earned from, Big Dig Phil, is my understanding. So this is not just a work out of the goodness of their heart, although I'm sure there are some good motives. My last thing I'd just like to find out, or have discussed further, revealed further, is what are the environmental impacts of the extension, specifically. And so I hope those details will be
That's a good
revealed, and this
question.
whole process will just get slowed down to where it should be, for the most benefit of the citizens of Quincy.
So on your question, I think it's a fair one. And I think part of the reason why we're here, there are going to be questions, believe it or not, that aren't going to be able to be answered tonight. But I believe that there's not going to be one question that we can't answer in relatively short order. And the environmental issues is a good question, and we can have that answered within a few days.
Thank you.
How you doing? My name's Ron Afser. I'm 69 Myopia Road. I have more of an observation than any questions. I've been on the Quarry Hills Advisory Board back 25 years ago, before this place was built. I became a member. I'm one of the first members here. So I've been around this Quarry Hills group for quite some time. And they do what they say they're going to do, and they do it well. They've been a tremendous neighbor. I live a couple of miles down the road. They've been a tremendous neighbor. They've been just such an asset to Quincy for everything they've done. Like you said, it used to be a dump, and look at the oasis we have here now. I understand that you're going to need 50 years to get the finances to do all the renovations and do everything. I personally, like I said, I've been around this group for many, many years, and I think they should be granted this lease because they're going to do nothing but help Quincy, and in turn, make it much more beautiful. Thank you.
Do I need this here?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Tom Palmer. I live in Milton. I'm a member of the Conservation Commission in Milton. I was a longtime officer and former president of the Friends of Blue Hills. I was associated with that organization when this project was permitted back beginning in 1994. Worked on it for like 10 years, trying to get agreements to make sure that this project's success did not interfere with public enjoyment of the Blue Hills. So here's my question. You currently lease nearly 500 acres of public open space in the city of Quincy. This vast tract shares a mile-long boundary with a publicly owned Blue Hills Reservation. Where along this boundary is the trail connection you agreed to provide?
So the QHA is and has been in compliance of its current lease. Conditions that came about in 1994 or before. There was a dynamic project, as I'm sure you know. It predates me. But we are in compliance with the current lease.
I asked where this connection is. Can you answer that?
Quarry Hills is and has been in compliance of the current lease.
I'm not getting an answer from you. I ask because I'm old enough to remember when this area was a dump, and it was not only a dump. In between this dump and the Milton dump, there were 50 acres of closed canopy oak woods where the so-called pipeline trail went from Cunningham Park across this area to the Blue Hills. There were other trails. There were trails going to the quarries. There were many ways for the residents of West Quincy and East Milton to walk to the Blue Hills Reservation across this area. Now we have heard tonight about trails being groomed and signs. Are those trails you talked about tonight, are any of them on the leased premises?
No, they're on MDC land.
Right. And yet, it's the leased premises that shares the mile-long border with the Blue Hills. So, because there is no way to cross that mile-long border, this very large project effectively blocks access to an enormous stretch of the Blue Hills Reservation. The Blue Hills Reservation is a large park. I ask you, is there anywhere on the border of this large park where public access is denied over a mile and a half distance?
I'm going to default back to my answer. We are in compliance with the guidelines of our lease.
All right, the agreement I'm talking about is not in the lease. It was a so-called special or Section 61 findings that were part of the state permitting process that the Friends of the Blue Hills worked hard on years and years ago. And in those findings issued by the state, this trail connection that I'm asking about was required. And tonight I asked, how many years later? 27 years later? Where is this connection? What answer did I get? I don't think I heard about any connection. That's what I would like to see, that in the future, these great, large, open spaces, namely the reservation and these 500 acres of publicly owned open space in Quincy, can communicate with each other because trails will go across the boundary. Right now, that is not happening. There is no way to cross that area except if you are paying for a golf cart, blah, blah, blah. So to me, that's not what the recreation complex was promised to be. It just never materialized. So I really don't, in my own opinion, feel that any leases or extensions should be granted until this trail network, which once existed and was enjoyed by hundreds of residents, can be revived and put back into place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it possible to turn off the background noise because it's difficult? It's from the
Yeah.
next room. Okay.
Hi, good evening. My name is Michelle Whalen. I live at 26 Hobomack Road, Quincy. First of all, I'm a big advocate of this whole complex. It's obviously beautiful, attractive. I'm not even a golfer, but I love to come up here, and I do look forward to some of the enhancements that you're looking to do. There are a couple of things that I think, in order to support that type of growth, above and beyond the lease issues, that I really do think we need to hear more about as part of that. Can you hear me now? Okay, sorry about that. So right now, there's, to the best of my knowledge, one road in and out. And yes, there's one light down the end of the street. But in order to support the volume of traffic and people, and from a business continuity perspective, God forbid there be a disaster, really do need to think about more than one entrance and exit into this location. So that's one thing that kind of jumped out. The light's great now, but it was already backing up the highway tonight, and other things. So I'm thinking is as you add hundreds of more people coming and going from this place, and in order for it to be, to do it safely, we already have a bunch of apartments and condos, that type of thing. I think that would, it's one of the things that we need to look at as part of the longer term growth of this facility. And I ask that that be part of it. The other piece that jumps out at me that I don't know whether I read it in one of the newspaper articles or saw it online, but with regard to the hotel, there was some mention about that there might be condominiums as part of that hotel. And I would just like to get clarification, because if it's condominiums are involved, I think we just want to be transparent and understand where and when that would happen. I'm not saying it's not a good idea. I'm just saying you're talking hotel here, and everything that we've heard about, with that one exception, has been hotel. But I'm hearing undercurrents of maybe there's
Sure.
future plans. Again, all good, but let's be transparent on what the real plans are, if there are condos or other apartments or that kind of thing involved.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then lastly, with regard to the lease, I'm learning a lot at these meetings. I know Dave's seen me at a couple of these lately. He's like, why is she showing up? Well, it's really so I can learn about this stuff. So the lease part of it's interesting, and the revenue sharing, I get it. But one of the things we need as a city is more revenue. And you folks are obviously making significant money and all the benefits here to your organization. But I think we need to find a way to increase the revenue to the city and spell that out a little bit more over the term of the lease, how it's going to increase. Should we not be looking at more of a tax structure? I know that there's corporate taxes that we've been talking about in the city. To up our ante a bit, we have to start offsetting some of what the residential taxes are. And a big place like this that's so successful should be able to help us more with that. And I'd like to get more insight on how that all works. And otherwise, I think it's, have a lot of good ideas and a lot of good things, as long as we can work through the lease and a lot of the other underpinnings of what the longer term plans are. I think this is kind of a short term plan, even though it's a lot of money. I think you're probably also thinking about, phase 2 and 3 and 4 and what the possible what ifs are. And I think we really do need to understand what they are. So, thank you.
Thank you. If you want, I can address the second question regarding the condos. So we are in the infancy stage of this, right? So we did a feasibility study back about 6-7 months ago, and it came back with very successful reviews on a boutique, not a massive hotel that would sit on premise. When you look at a lot of the newer hotels, especially in the realm of what we're looking in for, they have condos above them. I won't rule it out, but I'm not going to say we're going to do it either. Right now, in this economic market, the cost to build a condo is exorbitant. So unless the pressures for that come back down and it makes financial sense, we're going to stick with the hotel. The hotel works. I'm not going to rule out the condo. If it makes sense, we'll go through the appropriate channels and we'll discuss that further.
Hi, my name is Mary Beth Fasciano. I live at 22 Doble Street. I'm pretty much at the bottom of the hill. So my question is, this is all great. I love coming here for dinner, but we're talking more traffic. I'm going to segue a little bit in what you've previously said. My neighborhood's going to be crushed by the additional traffic. So my question is, what is your plan to address that impact? And number 2, is there going to be another access road coming in or going out? And if so, where's that going to be?
Sure. I'll start with the back. So there is no plan for another access road, and as part of any development project, traffic mitigation studies would need to be completed. So to look at the flow of the traffic on the hill, we think one of the benefits of the hotel is keeping people here longer for a wedding. So the volume of traffic not tied to the queue or Archstone, but at Granite Link should stay on premise longer. So we think it should actually minimize traffic, not add.
It's not going to minimize. That's not going to work.
But regardless of that, you have to go through the proper channels. We'll do the traffic study that goes along with any development.
That really, really needs to be addressed, and I know my neighborhood is extremely concerned about that.
Sure. I get it. Thank you.
Hi, Kathy Thrun from Wollaston, Massachusetts, 234 Everett Street, because you have to do that at public hearings. I have 4 questions. You can take them one at a time.
All righty.
Or I'll tell you all of them.
All right.
First question, in directing to the last question that was answered. Once you own the land, which is part of this proposal, what's to prevent you from building condominiums if we don't want them?
So there's an option to buy, right? So that is part of the the lease extension an option to buy. It's not the outright purchase. So we will explore that option, and if it makes sense with us and the city, as Chris articulated, we'll move forward from there. Anything that goes onto premise as we build here, whether it's on the lease portion or if we do buy said area, it has to go through a natural design process. So we can't just build what we want. It will fall through that.
A natural design process, does that mean public hearings, community meetings?
Whenever a new structure goes up in the city of Quincy, it follows a specific process. These guys are probably more in tune to this than I am, but there's no bypass of that because we're on leased land. So we'd have to follow the codes and standards from the city.
Chris, can you answer?
Not any better than Kevin did. I think he hit it. The option to buy is an option to buy. If they exercise that option, that will then entail a new set of plans, and we'll have a better idea of what exactly it wants to be at that point. That sale has to be approved by the city council. So yes, that means public hearing before the city council. That means deliberation by the city council. That means approval by the city council. Beyond that, all zoning requirements would have to be addressed via either a zoning change, via zoning board of appeals, and most definitely a planning board special permit process. So there's multiple layers of regulatory process that would come along with any decision that Quarry Hills makes to exercise that option to buy. It doesn't flip a switch and then magically there are condos and a hotel up there. There's a process that goes along with that.
Thank you. Question is, you're leasing public land. You struggled with some of the terms, and I know that we can have a debate about that, of the old lease. This current lease looks like it is less financially beneficial to the city. There is more expenses in this lease than there was in the first lease. Why do you deserve a second lease?
I guess I can start with what are the differences? What are the different things that are taken out of it? Can you go into detail of what you noticed between the current and the last?
I think the biggest difference was maintenance and undefined expenses.
So it's on the food and beverage, which is net, it's all reasonable expenses, and we get audited by the city of Quincy at their will, and we do our own self-audit by a third party. So we're not putting anything on there that shouldn't be on there. There's no exclusions on actually there is one exclusion on the the proposed lease, which would be deferred depreciation. So that was something that we were able to take benefit from. It is not on the lease going forward.
I'm sorry, I didn't read it that way, but I will reread it. And speaking of audits, I understood from your November 18th meeting that the audit had been completed in April of 2023. I and several others FOIA'd a request. I got that audit report this afternoon. What's the problem? Chris? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Essentially, it wasn't 100% completed, and at that point, when the concept went back on the shelf, it wasn't a driving factor. When we re-began discussions, again, we immediately said, let's get that thing wrapped up and get it to the public. So you have it now, and
I have it now, but I had this afternoon to read it.
well, here's
It's a community meeting.
Sure, and again-
And of course, there's the public hearing.
sure. Essentially, yes. That
It's 84 pages, Chris.
you can get 84 pages between now and next Monday.
Maybe.
And again, these are, as we said at the beginning, the questions that you have tonight, if you do have questions relative to the audit, feel free to ask them. I'm not going to answer them. We will have the auditor available on Monday evening at the hearing to answer questions relative to the specific work that firm did to do this. And in the meantime, between now and next Monday, feel free to email me, and we will get the auditor those questions. He's prepared to answer those questions at the meeting on Monday night.
I always love talking to you, Chris. Last question, and it's a bit embarrassing.
Uh-oh.
So I'm going to go with it anyway. I keep getting told that this is a done deal. How did you manage that?
I can let Chris handle that, but from our side, it's not a done deal. That's why we're here tonight. We're going through the same stepwise process that we did the last time around. So it is far from a done deal.
What he said, there's a legislative process, and there's quite likely there's a city legislative process, and there's also a legislative process at the state level that we have to go through, because this is an amendment and extension of an existing lease, which was done by home rule petition originally. So we'll be going through the state legislature. The governor has to sign off on it. The legislature, both bodies, will have to sign off on it. So I think it's a pretty far cry from a done deal.
Hi, my name is Lee Gulledge. I live in Bunker Hill Lane. And not to be redundant, but my neighbors and I are all asking the same question about the traffic. You have all these extra people coming in, you've got the one entrance. And I mean, it looks like a great thing for the area, but it doesn't seem like you're taking into consideration all the surrounding neighborhoods. The other, we've been told that this isn't going to happen, but the mayor's trying to obtain property at the end of Bunker Hill Lane.
And I kind of had, that's why I stepped up. I kind of had a feeling that was going to be the question when I heard the street name. Mayor has no intention of taking any property to create a second egress into this site. There's not going to be...
Is he taking the extra property? Is he still...
I don't believe so, but it wouldn't be for, I guess there's a possibility. I don't know of any plan to take any property on Bunker Hill Lane. If that is a concept that's been floated out there, it has nothing to do with any traffic mitigation relative to this facility. And I'll just add a little bit on to what Kevin has said about the traffic situation. The solution that we have right now is a temporary one. It's a very good temporary one. It's a lot better than it was. It took a while for us to get there, but folks should know that we are in the pipeline. There's a bigger design through Mass DOT of a bigger, more major overhaul of that entire area that would solve some of these issues. I'm not saying all. I'm not saying that the traffic studies don't need to be done. I'm saying that this is the stopgap, essentially. It's a very good stopgap, but it's a stopgap. There is a larger process in place that, within the next several years, we should see taking shape. And that's would happen in conjunction with any development plan, I believe.
When I'm saying he's not, it was in the Sun, I think the Ledger, and on the news, I didn't hear it, not Bunker Hill Lane, he's taking property of, Quincy Shore Drive and a section of Blue Hill, section of the Blue Hills by the quarries at the end of Bunker Hill Lane.
So...
Not taking Bunker Hill Lane.
Understood. So what I think you're referring to is a desire, which is still a desire, but it's very infant and has not moved very far, is the mayor believes, and I think he's right, of course I do, I work for him, but that the city would do a better job maintaining the state-owned properties in the city of Quincy, particularly Quincy Shore Drive and the beach, and Squantum Point Park, and some of the facilities up here. We believe that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity on the beach. We believe there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for public access at Squantum Point Park, just to name a few things, and we would like the state, and it's through no fault of nobody, the DCR and the state agency that is the state agency that runs that. It is a massive operation. They don't have the resources that the city does. We believe, and we can agree to disagree on it, that the city has the capability to do some really fun, exciting things with the DCR property and take a little bit better care of them.
I disagree, but not the time and place.
I got you.
Hi, Jocelyn Sedney. I live on Monroe Road in Quincy. I have a number of different things to say, so at some point if I'm taking too much time, let me know, and I'll go back and sit down. But I will say whatever I have to say at some point. So anyway, I do want to say that I think Quarry Hills has really done a great job. There's no question that what we have up here is much better than it used to be. overall. It really is. And so it is an asset. And it's an asset for a lot of people who come from all over the country, all over other places in the state, who come here to eat and to play golf. I come up here, I bring my guests to watch the sunset, have a drink. I sometimes eat at the tavern, but I can afford to. And there are many, many people in Quincy who cannot afford to. And so when I look at this lease, and I'm talking about the lease of what is existing at this point, I'm drawing a line between the hotel, that's a whole different thing. This idea of buying 12 acres that apparently the mayor thinks is such a great idea is separate. I'm going to talk about the lease. And I'm talking about taxpayers in Quincy who deserve to have some sort of benefit as a result of this. And in my following comments, I'm going to have to get into the weeds of these leases, because I think you can't talk about the leases without getting into the weeds. So I apologize to everybody, because getting into the weeds can be tiresome, and sometimes it's kind of tough to go with. But I'm going to try to do it anyway and do it quickly. You said that over the 11 years, I believe it's 11 years, that you've been in control of this property. And when I mean you, I don't mean you personally, I mean Quarry Hills. We've gotten approximately $9 million. Now that's $9 million divided by 11. So we have not made $1 million a year. I wonder what profit Quarry Hills has made over that period of time. I had the benefit, because I asked through FOIA requests with the city, to look at the facts and figures from what we had been paid by Quarry Hills, and I just asked for 2020 through 2024. I just got the numbers on 2024, so I haven't been able to evaluate them, but I'm not seeing big numbers. For instance, 2022, we were seeing numbers like a couple $100,000 that eventually came to the actual city. And I think one of the reasons that happens is if you look at the current lease, the lease that's in place right now, you said we get 10% of the proceeds or whatever from the tavern, from the entertainment in the tent, from the other entertainment facilities. And there are some subtractions from the amount of money that from which we get the 10%. And you understand that? I think you mentioned specifics with respect to the golf, which is true with a golf course, and I'm not going to go there with the golf course. I'm just dealing with the tavern right now. And the present lease has a list of ordinary and unusual expenses that can be deducted before we get our 10%. And that list goes on. There are approximately 19, it goes on to the second page of exclusions. So it's 27 actual expenses that get deducted before we get our 10%. And those expenses that get deducted, bar payroll, payroll burden, payroll benefits, bar supplies, china, glass, and silver, contract cleaning, cleaning supplies, employee meals, equipment rental, food service wages, cost of goods, and food and beverage items, utilities for that portion of the clubhouse devoted exclusively to food and beverage, depreciation on the clubhouse, gas, ice, kitchen utensils, laundry, licenses, linen, music, menus, linen rental, office supplies, uniforms, decorating/flowers, credit card fees, and advertising. So when this lease was negotiated, it was negotiated heavily in favor of Quarry Hills because you had done a great job. You were doing a great job. You were promising us great things. And so all these deductions were allowed, but it results in us getting less than we ought to get. That's my position going forward from today. So that any lease that's negotiated going forward should provide for 10% of a number that does not deduct all of these things. In the present lease that's been proposed, you will deduct the usual and ordinary costs of doing business for all these services that you provide, but you don't define them. At least in the present lease, they're defined. If they're undefined, what is Quarry Hills going to regard as usual ordinary costs? What are we going to regard as usual and ordinary costs? But what's even worse, in this lease, Quarry Hills wants to deduct the cost of maintenance and maintenance of the entire facility, the bar room, the tavern, the other facilities that are here. So you're deducting even more. Usual and ordinary course of business costs, plus the cost of maintenance, which you don't get right now, plus you want to deduct the cost of financing. And you talk about changes to the tavern, changes to other buildings here on this property that we currently are leasing to Quarry Hills. So that's even more than we currently pay or are getting paid right now. So if you take what we're getting paid right now and you take out the cost of maintenance and all the financing, what are we going to get paid? You want a longer extension so you can make more money. We want more money out of this deal as well. The taxpayers of Quincy should not be getting less from this lease. And I know people will say, oh, we're going to have a hotel, room fees, the whole thing. That's different. That's the 12 acres that apparently the mayor has decided he wants to sell. I'm talking about the lease, the present lease property and the lease that we have before us. Why? Why has the city agreed that we should get less? I see absolutely no rationale for that. If anything, if we give you 50 more years on top of the lease, which is 2056 plus 50 years, we should get more. And there's no provision in this lease for an escalation of what we're going to get or any change. For generations, we're going to get less than we get today. The same rationale applies to the golf fees, but I'm not going to go into that because this is actually more significant. So hotel rooms and all that, that's great. If we sell 12 acres to the Marriott, we're going to get that too. But in terms of Quarry Hills and the property that we're leasing right now, we are going to get less. I've demonstrated this to city councilors with pennies. You take a pile of pennies, you take out what we get now, you take a pile of pennies, you take out what we're going to get in this lease. There are fewer pennies left in the pile. So I object to that. The other thing, too, is I know there's a reduction in the number of years you've asked for, but with the 99-year lease, it was to begin, the 99 years, the lease documents say, from the date of execution. So if you got the 99 years in 2022, then you would have 99 plus 2022. Now you want 50 on top of 2056, or 2256. So 2256 plus 50 is almost the same as a 99. I think you shave off about 15 years. So those are details that you only get if you actually read the lease, which is really significant. In terms of the option to purchase, the price that's going to be paid is going to be determined by two competing appraisers. We're going to get the highest value for that property if it's put out to bid. We want to know the highest value of this property. Some people say you should get the highest value for actually operating the golf course now, but I'm not going there. I'm just talking about the 12 acres and buying a hotel. In addition to that, I've heard about taking care of the playing fields, which includes the baseball fields as well as the soccer fields. And I think it's great what you've done at the baseball fields. We heard from Councilor DeBona about how appreciative he is. But on September 9th of this year, at the Parks Department meeting, a group of parents and a soccer group appeared and wanted to start some process by which they would find funds that they could combine with the city to make improvements on the soccer field. The soccer field was too wet, they said. They want turf. There are fences that are broken. There's no lighting. The parking areas are in disrepair. So they all wanted that at this park department meeting on September 9th of 2024, just a few months ago. Dave Murphy was at that meeting. He didn't raise his hand and say, wait a minute, Quarry Hills is going to help us with the soccer fields. Maybe we can work out a cooperation agreement with Quarry Hills. Dave estimated at that meeting that the repairs to the soccer fields were going to cost between $1 and $1.5 million. Who is going to pay that? Is it just going to be us? Is Quarry Hills going to enter into this agreement? They may not even know that this group of parents and this soccer group came before the Parks Department. But clearly, there are serious issues that have to be dealt with at the soccer field. So that's in addition to the baseball fields. In addition to that, I think that we heard earlier, maybe November 18th, about an advisory group. And we heard from Quarry Hills that, quote unquote, we heard you. We heard you. And they listed a number of different areas in which we were heard. And some city councilors say, oh, this is great. All the boxes were checked off. And one of them was the advisory committee. Now, it's true, citizens did say they wanted the advisory committee that's detailed in the current lease. It's supposed to be in place right now. And that advisory group was supposed to be citizens of Quincy and elected officials appointed by the mayor. And they were going to have a responsibility to make sure audits were done. They would have public meetings. They would review plans from Quarry Hills. They were an advisory committee. So now, in this new lease, you have provided for an advisory committee. That's true. And of the 8 people, 1 is from a Quarry Hills entity, 2 are from a Marina Bay management group that are the same people as Quarry Hills, the same group, owned by the same group, and the manager of some aspect of the Quarry Hill or the Granite Links facility. So 4 out of the 8 people are members of the advisory committee. And one of the things you specify is going to happen is if Quarry Links wants to make any changes to their use or whatever, they'll make a presentation to the committee. So great. They'll make a presentation to themselves about what they're going to be doing. It makes a mockery of that Citizens Advisory Committee. There will be on that committee 1 citizen from Ward 4, 1. Not 2, not 3, 1. So to say, and for city councilors to say, oh, check that box. Yep, now we've got the advisory committee. Check that box. Yep, we took care of the playing fields and the soccer fields. It's said on your slide. Yep, check that box. And there was nothing in there about checking the box about the financial issues that we've been so concerned about. So my point is, and actually I haven't said this, but I should, I regard the lease that you have presented to be a working document, that there is a way. I'm not saying get rid of the golf course, get rid of what we have right now. There is a way to have those things, to perhaps make some improvements so Quarry Hills can make more money, but also increase the amount of income that's going to come to the city from the lease so that taxpayers have some additional relief. In addition, that there should be changes to the clauses that deal with the advisory committee, the clauses that deal with other aspects of the lease. So it's a working document, and that's what happens. If maybe the city did like this lease, maybe they did. Maybe they did negotiate and they thought this was the best document, but I would suggest that it's not. You could have a citizens advisory group to talk more about this, but it's not the best document that we can have. And we're talking about generations of people for the city of Quincy. Don't we owe generations of people within the city of Quincy to give this our best shot? Keep the golf course, keep the facilities, make it accessible to people like myself who can afford it, but give the other people in Quincy some relief. Thank you.
Jocelyn, thank you, because now I don't need to say very much. My name's Lori Earl. I live at 118, I've forgotten my house address, 118 Billings Street in Quincy. And I just really want to just say 2 things. One, as a parent, this proposed lease that will end, if it is accepted, in 2106. This proposed lease, because it's 82 83 years, is beyond my generation and beyond my children's generation and goes probably down to maybe the next generation. And so a prime, amazing piece of land, maybe there is no other place that is quite like this top of a mountain with views of the ocean and views of Boston and expansiveness in a lovely location with easy access to roads. There may not be another piece of land like this. And so to tie this up and commit it to a management company who has not fulfilled all of the things that you can say you're in compliance, but has not fulfilled, Jocelyn explained some of those, has not complied with all of the expectations that were in the management company, whether that's thinking about soccer fields and pathways to Blue Hills and many other things that have happened in very recent days as you're planning for a request for another lease. But those things, I mean, if somebody has a manager and they're not a good, if you're renting from someone and they're not a great renter and they don't do all the things they say they're going to do, or they mess up your house, you don't keep renting to them, So we just want to, the value of this land for my generation and the generations to come, to tie that up until the year of 2106, to me seems obscene and really, really short-sighted. I would so much rather see the city put its time into a large plan for development for the city as a whole, instead of willy-nilly sticking up more condos and more apartments. Make a plan. This is an amazing city. This is an amazing spot. And I just don't want to see it so quickly passed on for so long. So that's near and dear to my heart. And then just, anyway, the other things Jocelyn said, so I'll go with that.
Good evening, all. My name's Virginia Ryan. I live at 89 Albrecht Road, Quincy, Mass. I've had the opportunity to come to this facility quite a few times, but I've never availed myself of the park and the trail. And I just want to advise you that when I went up there to take a look at the trail, right next to the soccer field, there was a lot of trash next to the soccer field, one of which was a mattress. So I think people think that that's a dump, and you should probably consider plans of some type of maintenance, maybe cameras to make sure that people don't continue to do that. The trail was okay. I think it does need some improvement, and that's my feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name's Debbie Riley. My address is 9 Landgrain Street. And I just wanted to speak on two things. I'm intrigued by the idea of the hotel. I'm not a golfer, but I love coming up here. I love having dinner and having a few drinks. I would love if the hotel was something like the Marabou Spa down in Plymouth. That would be an awesome Mother's Day gift from me. So I think that everyone here can agree that this city is far better off with this entity here than it was before. I mean, it's a remarkable success story. Nobody is going to dispute that. But the two things that I'm going to speak to is the walking trails. And I will tell you, Mr. Mason, if you're going to keep parroting that those trails are in compliance, you really should take the time to walk them. And I'd be happy to do that with you, with any of the management team, with any of the city councilors. I did walk them on Saturday, and I reached out to all the city councilors, and 3 of them did get back to me, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Ash, and Councilor Minton. And they are not in compliance. They are really disappointing, quite frankly. There is trash on one portion of it from the ball fields, which are terribly wet. They were awful. So really, that whole argument needs to be revisited. And like I said, I walked from the ball fields to the queue, and that really shouldn't even be maintained. I mean, it's terrible. It's like watching, where the sausages are made. It's awful. There's all debris back there. Some of it looks like it's for the maintenance of either the golf course or the fields. There's piles of mulch and sand and that sort of thing, but there's a lot of trash that is probably been dumped, illegally. And then I walked from the queue to the Cunningham Park, and that was a nice cut through, not very interesting, but it was clean and well maintained, and there were actually a lot of people with their dogs. I also attempted to walk the trail from the, I suppose is supposed to connect to the Blue Hills, right, to the Skyline Drive. I made it to the point wherever the teenagers drink and throw their beer bottles, and then there was a steep drop off, and it wasn't clear where the signage was, so my husband and I made the decision to double back. So I'd be happy to do that with anybody who wants to take a look and experience that, because it really is not, it's certainly nothing like Ponkapog. They have a lovely loop that goes around and goes through 2 of the holes on the golf course. And I think that's what people envision for it. But the one question I wanted to ask was, in that walking, I saw all of the vents or whatever for the gas, the methane gas, right? Is that what those are? Those, right. I assume it's for the dump. And I probably passed 25 or 30 of them. And my question is, who maintains that infrastructure? I think everyone probably knows that the methane gas, it's volatile. It's could be rather dangerous if not well maintained. So I don't know if that's in some of these documents, but I'd be curious to know who maintains that. And is there any revenue from that methane recapture, I think is how it's referred to. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. So for the methane gas recapture, that is closed. We're no longer capturing any gas from there. It's purely an exhaust. As far as the ventilation pipes you saw on the MDC land, that's not part of this lease. That's something that the city leases from the state, so they are responsible for those, for upkeeping that. We're responsible for everything on the lease premise.
So the part of the trail that connected to Cunningham Park, is that your land or?
You got to be more specific. So I thought you were talking over here.
Well, the trail from the queue
Yep.
to Cunningham Park, the new marked trail.
Yeah, I don't think that's our land, but we can circle back on that. It's not us. It's the MDC, or it's the queue.
So that trail that is with the new sign is not your land?
Yes, none of the land with the trails is our sign. We were just trying to be good partners with the Friends of the Blue Hills to try to accommodate and add some
So
signage.
none of the trails are actually on the lease land? Interesting.
None of our lease land.
Okay, thank you.
There. Excuse me. I'm Maggie McKee, 117 Rawson Road. This is a question just about audits. So since 1994, how many audits have been done of this golf course?
I don't know exactly how many. I will say that the finances are audited every year as part of our regular city audit independently. Specifically, how many third-party audits we've sent out to do since that time, I don't know. We'd have to look up and get back to you, Maggie.
And the audit that was just completed that Kathy mentioned, is what period does that cover?
'22.
2022, okay. Oh, that was probably for when it was requested for the 99-year lease, okay. So I guess my impression from this meeting is that there are still a lot of questions that are unanswered, including about all the things that Jocelyn brought up, even whether or not this, I can understand from Corey Hills Associates' position why you would want to build these things. That makes perfect sense, but I guess I'm more concerned about the city's perspective and the taxpayer's perspective. why we wouldn't be considering opening this up to bids, or just, it surprises me that environmental concerns haven't been already studied and looked at, considering that this is being proposed and possibly decided on in the next few weeks. So I guess it just feels very rushed, considering there's 32 more years of the current lease left.
Corey Hills can speak to their financial needs and why they believe the extension is necessary from the city's perspective. I know you came in a little bit later, Maggie. I don't want to 100% repeat myself, but I will. Go backing through the history of what this was and what it became and the cost it was a burden to the city, and to have a revenue source that we have now and the potential for that revenue source to grow over the course of time, that is the benefit to the taxpayer. The benefit to the taxpayer of this extension is that it provides the opportunity for our partner to make the things happen that they need to make happen to continue that bar graph. I don't know if that chart is still up. We want to see that number every year keep going in that same direction. If we sat back and did nothing and just let the lease go, that number is going to flatten and potentially lower. That's not a benefit to the taxpayers. We have this facility now. We have the opportunity to make it even better than it is. Our position is, why not give the opportunity to let it grow further?
So I guess I understand that, and it sounds like maybe that graph would keep going up. But as Jocelyn said, possibly it could even go like this. So I think if we are thinking about the values that we have to decide this big important decision, is it for kind of accessibility? Maybe that's one set of questions about who can access the space and in the future. Is it about making the most money for taxpayers, in which case maybe it would be to open it up for a bid? And I do understand that it was a dump and this company put some money into it. I also understand that as I understand it anyway, the dirt was provided by the Big Dig, and possibly people were even paid to receive the dirt as a tipping fee. So I don't know that, it seems like Quarry Hills Associates has certainly made a profit over the time that they've owned this land. So it's not like operating at a loss. But for us, is the value making all the money? Because then it seems like it would be fair to think about opening it up to other people. Or is the value being loyal to the business that's run it, which is certainly, maybe that is the value. But I mean, that would seem to lead to different avenues.
I understand where you're coming from. From the perspective of opening it up to bid, that is not something that happens for another 3 decades, if that were to happen. And in the meantime, the value is then decreased, because now you have an entity that the city has not made, its partner's not made a long-term commitment. They're not going to make the investment. They've been not given the opportunity to make additional investment. So now you have a substantial degraded property that does not have the value that it has today. And that risk, and sure, someone could come in, maybe, in a perfect world, sure. Could someone come in if we put it out and said they've got a better idea for here, and it's going to make this much more money. But taking that risk, as opposed to taking this risk, which is a known entity, and yes, I would say there is some loyalty involved in that. Of course there is. This has been a 30-year, 25-year process that has produced undeniably positive results for the city. So of course, when this entity that took all this risk, that put its own money on the table without knowing in the end what was going to happen, I don't think anyone back then could have predicted that a golf course, fine, the golf course was going to make a little bit of dough. The amount of money that is generated by this facility, this beautiful clubhouse, the tavern, all of that stuff was piecemeal over time. And now we have it all together. That risk, waiting 30 years and putting it out to bid again, who knows? Sure, maybe, but probably not because of the condition of the property. So our position is, and again, respectfully, that we're going to have differences on this, that we should take the opportunity now, secure this for the long term, and make sure that we get the return on our investment, that the taxpayers do benefit for the next several generations. That's just our position.
I get that. I guess I'm just also thinking, given that it seems like the city isn't auditing regularly and isn't getting as much money from even the next lease, I'm kind of thinking, are taxpayers really at the forefront of this decision, even for the current existing lease?
Yep, I would respectfully disagree with the premise that the new agreement is different revenue-wise than the one that exists today. And maybe we can flesh that out over the next couple of weeks to show. But my understanding, certainly the mayor's understanding, the financial deal, we're not touching it. The revenue share, we're not touching. It remains the same as it was. It was good enough to start. It's going to be good enough going forward. It's going to be even better going forward because we've added a couple things with the option to buy for potential of additional revenue. That's been our position. And there's a fundamental disagreement on what's included in there and what's not, but I think we'll be able to show that the deal's been the deal. There's no fundamental change in the financials of the agreement. And I'm sorry if you had a second piece of that question.
I don't know if I did or not, but I do have one last thing to say, and I know there's a line. But I guess I'm just, again, thinking like Jocelyn's taken a look at this, and she seems to have found things that could be a lot better. I just hope that the city, on behalf of taxpayers, would consider getting another look, getting a special real estate attorney to take a look at this lease and run through things and think about, carefully looking at the audits and making sure that the city is getting as much money as it really should be getting out of this deal. We still have 32 years left. Yeah.
Understood.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Peg Mansfield, 43 Arnold Road. Guess I'll start with, obviously this property is beautiful. I have frequented it, better than a dump, obviously. I will tell you my concerns, pretty much 3 of them. One, and I don't know if this is under Quarry Hills Associates or not, but the driveway into the ballparks. I've never gone into that driveway is a death trap. And the fact that it hasn't been addressed and hasn't fixed is beyond me. So that's a true concern for me, all right?
That's the city.
All right. So in the second part is, and again, I say this with all due respect, is that things were said here tonight that there's no change in the lease. But the language is different. Now, whether it all means the same or not, I'm not a lawyer, I don't know. But that makes me question the transparency and the honesty of what's being presented. The same with the hotel, all right? If there is thoughts that you may add condos to the top of it, it came up in the last committee meeting. To me, that should have been addressed right away. Not to say it, to me, makes it sound like it's a back-end deal. So that's just, and again, that's just my opinion, so it came up in the city council meeting. So if it's a possibility, and again, I know that's separate than the lease extension, but that concerns me. It just makes me doubt everything that's said. My other big concern, and I'll address this to the city council, is that as soon as it's mentioned that the mayor is in favor of this, to me it's an automatic yes. All right, I haven't gone to a lot of committee meetings, but I've tried to follow them for the last few years. I was at one of the original ones at Central High for the hospital extension, and again, this has nothing to do with you guys, so I apologize for that. But my concern is that if Chris Walker is here saying the mayor's in favor of it, none of them are going to say no. So you add that on the fact that there have been some differences or some, whether it's true or not, like language in the lease, maybe it means the same, but it's written different. It just puts doubts in everybody's mind, and I think that's what, I won't speak for everybody else, but I know that's my concern. Great idea. If I was in business, I would back this 100%. I'm concerned that the lease gets added on to the end of the current. If you wanted 50 years from now, I think I'd probably be more in favor of it. And again, there's just a lot of questions, and it's being addressed in a relatively short amount of time. If you have 32 years left currently, another year or two to vet all of this, I don't think is asking too much. But that's my opinion, and thank you so much for your time.
Hello, my name is Russ Parkman. I'm on the board of trustees for Friends of Blue Hills, and I'm here to read a prepared statement on behalf of Friends of Blue Hills. The mission of the Friends of the Blue Hills is to preserve, protect, and promote the Blue Hills, ensuring the hiking trails are well maintained, the wildlife and biodiversity are safeguarded, and the park remains an invaluable resource for enjoyment for the surrounding communities in the greater Boston area. We understand the proposed lease extension and subsequent hotel at Granite Links is located outside the Blue Hills Reservation and falls outside of the reservation itself and outside our jurisdiction. However, as neighboring development, the project has the potential to impact the park in several ways, including visual impact, drainage, biodiversity, and wildlife corridors. In the interest of protecting the integrity of the Blue Hills, prior to any final decision being made, we respectfully request the opportunity to review the site plans and collaborate with the town, the community, and the project developers. Our goal is to work together to ensure that if the development proceeds, it does so in a way that minimizes any negative impact on the park and its natural and recreational resources. Thank you for considering this request. We look forward to working with the City of Quincy, our members, and the developers to uphold the shared values of preserving and enhancing our region's natural beauty and recreational resources. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Maureen Masrimas, and I live at 49 Bayberry Road. And as so many other speakers have said just before me, what's the rush? At previous meetings that were held on the subject over the last couple of years, you readily admitted that in order to satisfy the requirements of lenders, they could go along with a 30-year lease. A 30-year lease would not require an initiative petition. And you have a 30-year lease right now. You have 33 left. And the language in the act, to me, is very disturbing. And I'm just going to read it. Section 1, notwithstanding the provisions of Chapter 40 and Chapter 30B of the general laws or any other general or special law to the contrary, the City of Quincy is hereby authorized to extend the lease of a certain parcel of land comprised of approximately 241.78 acres of land, together with any improvements thereon, etc. And the mayor of the city is hereby authorized to execute and deliver on behalf of the city such leases, deeds, grants of easement, contracts, and any and all other documents relating to the acts authorized hereby upon such terms and conditions as the mayor in the best interests the mayor deems in the best interests of the City of Quincy. This mayor may have the best interests of the City of Quincy at heart. We don't know what future mayors are going to think about the project. And as so many other people have said before us, it's a beautiful parcel. It's a great place. The dump was a dump. And you know, you've done wonders in bringing it up, but to me, there's no reason to throw out the rule book to accommodate this particular proposal. There's no oversight. There's the idea of selling the property off without having a request for proposal is ludicrous. And as Debbie mentioned about the methane, you say that that's no longer an issue. Why is it in the new lease? in the new lease, there is a provision for energy
Yeah.
somewhere around.
So what I said was it's no longer recouping funds. So it's the extraction system that was over there is obsolete. So there's no revenue being generated by the methane gas. That's what I
And
said.
how much revenue was generated by the methane gas, and did the city get its 10%?
Yes.
Okay. All righty. And I wanted to reiterate the concern about the advisory committee. I mean, that's unconscionable, because not only do you have the 4 representatives from Quarry Hills / Marina Bay, you have the ward councilor, who happens to be an employee of Marina Bay, Quarry Hills, whatever, and just one citizen. That's insane. And I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maria Mulligan. I am the chair of a group that's called Quarry Hill Citizen Advocates. Many of them who have spoken here today. I just wanted to tell you that our group is several hundred people large, and I've been collecting questions. We just started collecting questions yesterday, and I already have a page of them here. I'm going to give them to you, and what I would like the counselors to do is to go through all of these questions, and I'm going to keep giving them to you as I get them, okay? Every one of these questions requires or demands an answer publicly. There's a lot of questions about this. So I'm going to give this to you because it will take all night to read them. And I wanted just to make one request, and then I'll sit down. We have a public hearing coming up next Monday. So far, QHA has had the opportunity to have 2 presentations, which are over an hour of testimony. The public, in my group specifically, requests at least an hour of uninterrupted testimony next Monday. Without being told by the council, and I have been told, 2 minutes each. I want 1 hour uninterrupted. We have a PowerPoint. We have data that some of it has been discussed here today. A lot of it hasn't. We want to present all of it to you. We have some of our own ideas that are awesome. So, counselors, please give us an hour next Monday night. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Mimi Balsamo. I'm from Quincy, born and bred, several generations of Quincyites in my family. Questions that have come up in my mind just tonight, many other comments that have been made, I support wholeheartedly, but I wondered about if the city sells the 12 acres of land to Quarry Hills, I guess if there was a great tax benefit and a great profit to the city, I could see the motive, but otherwise, I'm not sure what the scheme is that would make that more profitable to more of a benefit to Quarry Hills, but I wonder who would set the price for this 12 acres? And then I wondered, will that mean that the cost of loans and repayment will be discounted from, will that be one of the discounts that will be taken from the amount that should be paid to the city for the share of the city profits? Will you add that onto that list? Will independent realtor set the price? And will will there be, will we sell you that land and then will you deduct the loan payment from the amount that's owed to the city annually? It just makes me wonder, what is the benefit to Quarry Hills to buying this 12 acres and to extending this lease for another 32 years? Another 50 years to add up to 82 years. And since our city government now has the state ethics board involved, I wonder if it isn't time to slow down a bit.
Specifically on the question, what benefit does Quarry Hills Associates get from the sale of the option to sell? And Kevin can reiterate this, but there is none. The lease extension is what is important to our partners at Granite Links. This option to sell provides an opportunity for additional revenue to the city going forward. And so that's coming from the city and the city only.
How does that work?
Because under the terms of the lease, if we just take the two scenarios, we extend the lease, and this property is still within the leased grounds. If they do a development on this property, we don't get property tax. We don't get the benefit of the sale of the property. So that's 7 figures right there that we don't get. We sell the property, we do get property tax, and we do get the benefit of the sale of the property. So that's the major difference, that it adds a layer of financial benefit to the city that we would not be able to accomplish without the sale of the property.
So where's the incentive then for Quarry Hills to buy if there's no benefit to them?
I would say in a negotiation, there are things that come up from both sides of the table that one may benefit one side a little bit more than the other one. It may not have an incentive, may not be much of an incentive, but to make the deal work, this is how when you're sitting at a table figuring these things out, these are the things. It's give and take. This one piece was something that the city put on the table. There may not be, and I don't want to put words in Kevin's mouth, but I'm pretty sure that their goal is the extension, and they can make all this stuff happen with the extension. As he said during his presentation, it's the key to the financing is the term of the lease. With the sale, the option to buy, it's just an added benefit to the city.
Will the city then defer the taxes for 40 years or some long number of years?
I promise, no.
Frank Terrio, Bunker Hill Lane. Just kind of want to go back to a question that I don't feel was really answered regarding the end of Bunker Hill Lane. Aside from being a really narrow street and other issues of already a lot of traffic and cars up through the Blue Hills, down Furnace Brook, the end of Bunker Hill Lane, again, there's a lot of people have heard talks of cutting through the end of Bunker Hill Lane. You're saying you know nothing about it, but is there anything projective?
Hold on. Yeah, I'm saying there was a little bit of a different of a question that I wasn't. It related to sort of the DCR property and whether or not the city was interested in acquiring the DCR property, which it is, which may include a piece at the end of Bunker Hill Lane. Unequivocally, without question, black and white, no plans, not
in the
gonna
future?
happen. In the future, never going to happen. Well, this mayor's the mayor. He said it.
Well,
There
he's
was a
the
rumor
mayor.
that went around. It's not going to happen. There are so many things that would need to happen for that to happen. Nothing's impossible. It's a virtual impossibility, and we will not propose it, will not support it, will not accept it. Not going to do it.
Is the Granite Railroad a historic site and it is on the United States National Register of Historic Places,
Yeah, we're-
and has its own Wikipedia page.
No plans to touch that, to change that in any way.
Now or in the future.
Now or in the future. Now, if there's a benefit, if there's an added, see, this is where I was a little bit equivocating on the actual piece of property that is apparently at the end of Bunker Hill Lane. I don't know if that's DCR. If that's DCR property at the end of Bunker Hill Lane, and it ties in to the railroad in some way, shape, or form, is there a potential, and I don't know this, I'm just thinking where this may have come from, is there some sort of added amenity that we could do to the historic site because that property would be the city's? That, I would say that if that came up, it wouldn't surprise me, but I have no knowledge of it standing here right now.
So it sounded more and more like it's a potential thing.
No, there's no road going through Bunker Hill
Okay.
Lane, ever.
Okay. All right. The other thing was about your golf carts. For recharging, I don't know what your cost and all that was. Solar to recharge them?
Something we could consider. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Steve Perdios. I live at 86 Ruggles Street down in Quincy Point. I guess a few points I'd like to make. I want to start off, plenty of people have made positive comments tonight about the facility and what has evolved up here. And I guess I just want to say that I don't, although I'm not supportive of this concept, I understand what Quarry Hills is doing. I get where you're coming from. I understand why you're doing it. You're up here day after day. You see it. It feels like it's your property. You're the stewards of it. You're here. You've cultivated it. It's been something you've brought along for years. And you're asking yourself, well, how do we squeeze more out of this? How can we get more out of it? And I completely get that as an entity, as a private entity, to try to get more profit. That would be your goal, to try to build something else here. You guys have a long history of being developers, of developing things. I completely get the concept. So I don't have any real issue with Quarry Hills in itself. I guess I would kind of mention one item that I would take offense with from what Quarry Hills has done. There's been talk about the trails that have been up here, and to no one's surprise, I'm going to talk about the trails. If you have an opportunity to talk to former Ward 5 City Councilor Chuck Phelan, it is unequivocal that the trails were a commitment that Quarry Hills has made. Trails through the parcel, through the property, unequivocal, this was something that was put on the table, and in his words, when the council voted for it 20 years ago, when he was first on the council, when they voted for it, it was with the intention that the trails would go through the property, just as we see at Ponkapog and other golf courses around the country. It's absolutely possible. It's absolutely doable. The only mark I'll give against Quarry Hills is when you make a promise, you should keep your promises. That was a promise made. You can equivocate all you want. You can tell us that it's not part of the deal now and that you've lived up to your standards and however you want to phrase it, however you want to spin it, you made a promise, you backed out of it. So I'll put that mark against you guys. I've got nothing else. We're now seeing things happening. We're now seeing things happening in the last, several months. We now have this advisory committee that's being stood up. We have improvements made at the ball fields. And I'll tell you, what you've done at the ball fields, it's half what needs to be done. It's half. So let's not pull muscles by patting ourselves on the back, because it's half of what needs to be done. Okay? And I want to address Mr. Walker's comments about what it was. I think you did a great job presenting the picture of where this came from. And I had the opportunity to talk with former City Councilor Chuck Phelan, and he was present for it. And he's a strong believer that it was the right thing to do. We took a dump that was costing the city money, and we came up, whoever it was, I don't know who gets the full credit for that, but came up with an idea, hey, let's utilize this space. We've turned it into a dump. Was literally a dump. It was turned, and then turned it into a golf course. Concept makes a lot of sense. The crew that ended up with it obviously did a masterful job with it. It's a fully functional, clearly making a lot of money. My question, how long do we have to thank them? How many years and how many millions of dollars of profit do we thank them for what they did at capping a landfill? I would say we've probably reached enough thank yous. My guess is we've kind of got to that point. If you remember, if we've made $1 million, they've made $9 million. Okay, so at some point, I think it's time to reopen this management of the golf course up to public bidding again. So let me get to my main point here that I want to make. So this land is open space. Okay, this is land that is owned by the city of Quincy. Okay, so I really don't have a problem with what Quarry Hills. I get where they're coming from, but right now we have 9 members of the city council and the mayor. We have 10 elected officials. One person is recusing himself. We've got 9 elected officials. The mayor has very, very clearly stated where he stands on that. Respectfully, Mr. Walker, I disagree with the mayor. No surprise, right? Neither one of us are going to be shocked by that. The point of, what do we want our elected officials to do? What do we want? What role do we want them to play? In my opinion, our elected officials should be there to look out for the best interest of the public. What is the public's best interest? What is in the best interest of the public? To me, that's what I want our 10 elected officials to do. Put the best interest of the public first. And what I'm hearing tonight is the best interest of the public is some more money. That's what's the best interest of the public. I don't want my elected officials taking public land and trying to find out the best way to make money off it. Our public lands, our open space is for us. Our open space is for the people. It's supposed to be for the people to utilize and to get some benefit out of it by being on the property. I walk Faxon Park, Marymount Park, ball fields. We're not paying into these ball fields so that we can make money off it. We do it so that we can have a benefit as the public to utilize these spaces. I don't want my elected officials saying, how can I get the best dollar from open space? I get in this unique situation. In this unique situation, we had a landfill that was costing the city $1 million a year, and it was reversed to bring something into the city. For 30 years. 30 years it's worked out okay. It's time to turn this back over to the people. It's time to, if I go up there to golf, has the numbers changed? $165 for me to golf? I can't afford that. The only way that I can access this is to pay out my $165 and walk there. I can't afford that. I don't know how many other people in the city of Quincy. I'm betting the number is pretty low on the number of people that can therefore access our open space by shelling out $165. And so the question was asked earlier, is this a rubber stamp? Is this automatically going to go through? I get that there's a lot of hurdles and things that are going to happen. But I'd ask the 8 remaining city councilors, your job is to read the lease. Your job is to drill down into the details. Your job is to understand what's really happening here. Okay? We can argue on point by point. Should it be 10%? Why isn't it 11%? Why do we have, why is ice being removed from the cost of things? Why is music? Why are certain items being? We can argue individual points, but I guess in the larger picture, I'd ask the question: is this really the best use of the property? And is really what we're trying to do is get more money out of open space? We're just trying to squeeze more dollars. Does that mean that we should be then trying to get more money out of Faxon Park? Why aren't we getting more money out of Marymount Park? Why aren't we getting more money out of these other? Because they're for the people. They're open space areas that are for us, okay? We can't even walk through the property to get to Blue Hills. The trails that are up there are they're an embarrassment. They're through people's backyards. They're hokey. They're they're an embarrassment, and they're nothing like what was promised. And so what I think really should happen here is ask the question, what is the best use of this property for the people of Quincy, for all of us? And I think that our city councilors should be asking that question. And it brings me to the concept of, well, what's the long-term plan? Like, we've talked about a hotel, another building, and then the clubhouse being, so 3 buildings. But when that's done, then what? What's going to happen next? And it's called master planning. Is there a master plan? Where is the point where we're going to say, okay, that's it, we're done? There's no more development up here. We're not going to do anything else. At what point do you say that's enough? So in each year that there's an election, we have local elections, and people come, politicians go around, and there's questions asked. And every year the question comes up, why doesn't the city of Quincy, why don't we, have a city, have an open space plan? I'm sorry, pardon me, not an open space, a master plan. Why don't we have a master plan for the whole city? Many, many other communities around the state have master plans for the whole city. I'm actually getting to something here, I promise. What I'm told, what the answer is year after year, is that we don't have an open space plan because we have zoning laws. We have zoning plans. We have zoning maps. And our zoning maps say open space is open space, and this is where we want development. And now we're talking about developing in open space. And so does that mean that all of the open space of the city could be on the hook? Could we be developing it somewhere else in other parts of open space? If we're willing to change the zoning here to allow more development on this property, then what happens to the rest of our open space? Are we just throwing out all the zoning maps? Are we just does open space have any meaning across the city anywhere if it doesn't have value here? It's a slippery slope. We came into this, yeah, we want to try to build a golf course to cap a landfill, I get that, but now we're at a different point, and we should be asking the question, what's in the best interest for this property for the citizens of Quincy? I hear what the mayor's saying. The mayor is saying what's in the best interest of the city of Quincy is to get more money out of the property. I think we could do a little bit better. I think we could find ways to make this so that it is accessible and useful and more beneficial to citizens of Quincy. And I would argue that we should take a step back and ask the question, what does everybody in the city have for an idea of how we could use this property? I don't think it should just be one entity that's up here all the time and they see it as theirs. And what they're asking for here is really to take control of this. The reason that it's 80 plus years of lease is so that there's less of this. Like there's less of this arguing, there's less of this comments, there's less feedback from people, and they can control more. Very clear, very obvious. And I get that. I get why you would do that. But to me, that isn't what our elected officials should be doing. Our elected officials should be asking the question, how can we take this property, how can we take this open space and create something that's better for the people of Quincy? By definition, a hotel, by definition, has nothing to do with the citizens of Quincy. Nobody who has a house within a quarter mile or a mile and a half is going to stay at a hotel, right? I mean, you can go home for free rather than stay at a hotel for $300, right? And maybe there's this function you come up once in your life, but you're not going to do it on a regular basis. It's for other people around the state. It's not for Quincy residences. And I want something here for Quincy residences. And I would argue that we should take a step back and ask the question, what's the best use of the property? Because I don't want my elected officials asking the question, how can we take open space and squeeze the most amount of money out of it? To me, that shouldn't be the goal. Thank you for your time.
Hello, I'm Nancy McAdams. I live at 16 Beverly Street. I just have 3 questions. The first is, do you need the 12 acres to build the hotel?
To build a hotel? No, not at 12 acres.
Will the hotel reside within the 12-acre parcel?
Within the 12 acres, yes.
Okay, so you do need it. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Chris, you mentioned earlier that this is a separate process entirely with the 12 acres, that it has to go through its own channels, its own approval. Why is it in the addendum?
It creates the option for that process to happen without...
But only for one party?
Only for that part, correct.
Okay.
It's a carve-out.
A carve-out.
Carve out the specific parameters of that piece of property where the hotel would go, and the lease provides an option to buy.
Okay.
Once the developer or the partner decides they would like to exercise that option, that then triggers that subsequent process.
Okay. So that could be next year, that could be 50 years.
Correct.
So our hands are tied with the 12 acres for Quincy.
Your hands are tied with the 12 acres
Yes.
until
Well, it's tied to this
it's
organization.
tied, yes, it's tied to this organization for that 12 acres,
Yeah.
regardless of whether we do the option to buy or not,
So there's no other opportunity to use the 12 acres for anything else?
to carve out today.
No, just for anything else?
No, because it's now subject, it's within the leased property right now. So they already have control of that 12 acres. We're
For
carving
another
out
32 years?
for at least another 32 years.
Okay. So why are you making it easier now for them to buy it instead of it being put out to the public? Like what, you already said yourself, this is a separate process.
Yep.
So why can we not retract this from the addendum? Why not just take it out?
We believe it provides a benefit to the city. The revenue, and I just respectfully disagree with Steve, relative to what a hotel brings to the city of Quincy. We have
Just
tens-
interrupt you, what is the
Hold on.
revenue projection?
I think we can come up with that number off the top of our heads. Well, we know without,
For the hotel tax?
yeah,
About $500,000 a year.
$500,000 a year. Now, I will say the hotel tax, the hotel, the people that don't live in the city, that come in and stay at our hotels, tens of millions of dollars into park improvements over the last 10, 15 years. So that's where, what good does a hotel do, people? That's what it does. It provides that space out in front of City Hall, hotel motel tax. I could go down a list of everything that hotel motel tax, in the wisdom of the city council way back before Mayor Koch decided that they were going to implement this hotel motel tax, set it aside specifically for open space and park improvements. And millions and millions of dollars of park improvements have come from the hotel motel tax. So I respectfully disagree, and I know this was not your question, but I respectfully disagree with Steve about, well, the people of Quincy don't get anything from a hotel. We get a lot from a hotel. Now, if, as I explained to a little bit earlier on, when someone asked a different question, we have that option 30 years from now, when the value of the property is different, when the investment in the property has stopped, when the future is uncertain. We have that option. Yes, we could let this thing go for 30 years, tell our partners, we're good, keep it level, it'll depreciate, it'll become something that it's not right now, and we're okay with that because we're going to open it up again. Or, and our view, respectfully, is that the better risk is lock it in for the additional term, allow them to create the space that provides more revenue to the city and provides those things that we've been talking about, the park improvements, the improvements that come from the revenue that we make here. In a vacuum, and I understand the point, this is public space, it's a park, it could be a park. And I understand it, but that argument to me feels like it's in a vacuum, like nothing, like this tomorrow, if it was just a blank slate, we could have done that in the first place. The problem with that is we couldn't have.
Okay, so you're saying they already have the land.
They have the land for 32 years at least.
Okay, so why don't you just build the hotel? Why does the purchase piece have to be in this amendment?
Because as Kevin has said, the main driving purpose for all this is the financing that is necessary to secure money for that kind of development requires a long-term commitment.
So, you'll have the money to buy the 12 acres, but you don't have the money to build a hotel.
No, that's not what we're saying. So
Well,
it's
it's
two
just an
things.
interesting way of
It's your
looking at the
interesting way of
same
putting it. but,
problem.
So
Please don't be.
I'm pointing out the facts. So buying the 12 acres or leasing the 12 acres with 32 years left, we're going to partner with a hotel partner, a builder, a hotel partner. No one's going to sign up for a 32-year lease to build a hotel here and not knowing what the future is after. So it gives certainty outside of those 32 years. That's the main piece there.
Okay.
And then the option to buy or to lease, right? So if we have the lease extension and there's 80 or 70 years, whatever's left, by the time the hotel goes up, then there's enough term for that hotel provider to recoup their funds and build it out. On the buy side, it opens up a lot of different avenues for us to bring in different hotel partners. A lot of hotel partners don't like working at a leased land.
Okay, that's a clear answer. That makes a lot of sense. And my only other question is there any other private company that the city of Quincy has a lease with in this capacity?
I would say, just off the top of my head, I mean, this is, as we've discussed ad nauseum tonight, that this is a very unique situation to the extent that...
No, but is there any other private company that we have a lease with?
A long-term lease like this, I'd have to go back and look. I'm kind of doubting it.
Okay. Thank you. I thought so.
Hi, my name is Vivian Borick. I live in the old Quincy School on 94 Newberry Ave in North Quincy. I at first wasn't going to say anything because I felt that I had the idea that this was a done deal. But after hearing everybody, I just want to add a few things that I think haven't been said for the whole process and to express my thoughts. People were articulate and researched and thoughtful and caring and passionate. I think that's fabulous, and I hope that any of our viewers or councilmen and decision makers will heed that. What I want to say is, I have a master's in the humanities program at the University of Chicago, where I had friends in urban planning. This is decades ago. And when I moved to Quincy, right after 9/11, and I got the Quincy Sun, I realized that there was, plans for new things and new buildings and things, but no planning and no master plan. And I think that urban planning major really sounded pretty marketable at this point, but why didn't Quincy have one? And I don't know, but I do think it's important to hold on to get people's opinions. And unlike what was said before, I have experienced my experience has been when a new building has been proposed, I didn't get information about it until the day before of it, or it was on the web and it didn't show till with much difficulty. And it was really hard. Basically, it was hard to say anything in the public process because the mayor's MO is to pick the design and then the people have a chance to talk about it, and you might get 2 stories lopped off and a tree built. But I would really love to have that changed, and so to the answer that this is going to be whatever's going to be built or might be built or would be false. I hope that this is that there is really a true marketing campaign and publicity to get people's opinions in, and not just once the building is built, that's it, and you can do what you want with the stores, with the floors rather. I mentioned I was packing for my appointment to move here after 9/11. Remember what was before 9/11? How many of you wore lavaliers with your name and address or your name and your picture on it? The world has changed so much after 9/11. That one day. And so what I like to say is, I don't think, personally, I don't think that when we have a lease for 30 years or 35 years, that it's meant to be a lease. And I don't think as human beings we really are in a capacity to build for 100 years from now. And maybe 30 years from now, we'll want a helicopter port or something else. We don't know. And I'm just thinking that in deference to your wishes to make more profit and to grow as your company, I think that we as a city really should make room for growth and needs and changes in the world. and not to just take every single space because it's there and we can make money out of it. So, you know, the other thing is that I love to go to the biennial, the twice a year beautiful ceremonies in the Adams birthday celebrations at the Unitarian Church in Quincy Center. And then we always wondered about this wonderful principles of democracy and how Adams was so eloquent and had to speak his mind, and might not have been a favorite lover boy of everybody, but he did. And look, we love him and respect him so much. So I want to just, and particularly in, you know, what Steve just said, we do not have to plan the future and to make decisions now. And yes, your company wants to have chances for more money later and profitability increased. But you know, we are part of a civilized world, and this is Quincy, Massachusetts. And I think that if of one place, you know, we could, you know, just slow down and say we do not have to plan for the rest of the 100 years. And so, and if we do, I think then we should open it up because there are different imaginations, and who knows what a different architect or a different company will offer. We don't know. And so there's if you want to open it, sell the land, which I personally wouldn't, but if you do, then open it up. No, we're talking about the best for the company, the best for the city, but also the quality of life for the people. So just from the imaginations, you don't know the changes of the world. You don't know, and don't forget, we still have that trail to fix from 94 that people are waiting on. So thank you for your time.
I think that concludes the open discussion. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. It was very thoughtful. I know I have a lot of notes here. I know that I have a lot to think about. I think that a lot of the points raised here tonight are important, and I'm glad that we had this opportunity. I want to remind everybody that Monday the 9th at 6:30 p.m. at City Hall, there'll be an open forum for more discussion. So thank you all for coming tonight, and I appreciate your time.